Star Trek, the next generation. You love throughout the nation. You're my favourite show. Was in every episode, you're lucky. You don't have to wait for buses. You just step into the transporter and off you boldly go. Mr. Wall's my favourite person.
We are the Org. Our mission is to assimilate Star Trek The Next Generation, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and beer. Lots of beer.
Hello, friend.
Hello.
Welcome to Borgcast 1214.
With Peter and Anne-Marie.
Doing Nemesis.
Woohoo! Yeah. We have a review of Star Trek vs. Transformers Issue 3. What did we think, my darling?
Batshit crazy.
Batshit crazy. Yeah, suddenly they start swallowing the crazy pills. And we get one Decepticon transforming into a D7. Yeah, because obviously... And then right at the end, the Enterprise transforms into a giant robot because... That's the way they build them, apparently. Controlled by Kirk, so it's... What's it called?
Psychically controlled by Kirk.
Yeah, what's it called?
Tiberius...
Maximus.
Yeah.
Meridius McSpud. I mean, really? Oh, it's silly. Very, very silly. Oh. Or, as our son put it, absolute boulder dash. Because, yes, he is from the 18th century. I mean, it's fine. I mean, I kind of wish it had started that way, because it feels like it's sort of jumped the shark, which is a ridiculous thing to say about something about Star Trek, the animated series, but there you go. The other thing that troubled me slightly was that lots of pictures fleeing of humans, but they're not in silhouette, which they would be in the cartoon, so that kind of brought me out of it as well. It's the silly little things like that. But anyway, it's fun enough, it's just silly, very silly.
Very silly.
So what does Mr. Llama the God think of it?
Lamagas log, Scott Day, Okjay, Yayig, Treejig. Be careful what you wish for. Right then, okay, so issue 3 of Star Trek vs. Transformers, and we're really getting into the action now, which really isn't saying very much because we kind of started balls deep in the action anyway, so we don't really have anywhere to go from there. It's kind of hard to give a detailed, in-depth review without giving away any spoilers, so I'll be incredibly vague about this. Essentially, this issue carries on in the same vein as the previous issues. It's the Autobots and Starfleet teaming up against the Decepticons and the Klingons, and all sorts of shenanigans around there. Again, there's some nice little moments. Some of the characters continue to be handled quite well. The main thing that this issue does, though, is it grants me one of the things that I'd really hoped. And I don't want to say too much, but the end of the issue is stupid, and it brought a big grin to my face, because that's the kind of thing that I was actually there for. They've actually finally done a big, dumb, stupid idea, and great, this is exactly the time to do it. Not in any canon properties, not in your proper Star Trek, not in your proper Transformers. But yeah, this is what we're here for. Not just the fighting, but some concepts where we've mashed the two things together. So yeah, the end of this issue left a smile on my face, and I'm not dreading the next issue, but we'll see when it comes. Can't really say a lot more about that, so without further ado, on to the main event.
Thank you, sir. Yes, very silly.
Yes. Very.
So, speaking of the main event, we ought to have a trailer, oughtn't we?
Yeah.
In darkness, there is strength.
It seems as though we are truly sailing into the unknown.
I recommend extreme caution.
Fascinating.
The time we have dreamed of is at hand.
The mighty Federation will fall before us.
Do you think this is a wise course of action, sir?
We're about to find out, Data.
Yeah, well, that was spoilery as heck. All the best bits of the film, such as they are, compressed into a minute and a half. Yeah, but that's what movie trailers do, let's face it, so I suppose we shouldn't be surprised. But it's also very action-y. It makes it, I mean, I suppose it is quite an action-oriented film. That's possibly one of the drawbacks of it, but yeah. It's got a crap title.
Yeah.
Wonderful score by Jerry Goldsmith. Best thing about it, pretty much. Yeah. It followed the longest gap between any Star Trek movie, all of 4 years, thanks to Insurrection being a suckfest.
Yep.
Well, this was an even-numbered film, so it was going to be awesome, wasn't it?
No.
Directed by Stuart Baird, who went back to being an editor after this.
What
Funny
a surprise.
That. All the cast were critical of him. He didn't bother to watch any Next Generation before filming this.
It shows.
Yes. Curtis has called him an idiot.
Nice.
Because she likes mincing her words.
Nice.
The writer, John Logan, was apparently a fan of the series. Not that you'd know it from the continuity mess-ups that are throughout. He also wrote, though, so he can write The Aviator, which we saw relatively recently. It's a good film.
Oh, yeah.
And Skiffle. So we know he can write a good script, just not this one.
No. Maybe he took lessons from this gobshite.
I don't know.
So, you have a Starfield, and Star Trek appears in the wrong font written badly. Doesn't bode well.
It's not a great start, though.
And then it says Nemesis.
Yes, which, as I say, crap title.
And then you're with Jim from Neighbours.
All right, yes. This isn't somebody that I would have ever recognised. It's only because everybody keeps saying, "Oh, it's Jim from Neighbours." It's like, oh, he's a person, is he? Okay.
Dale, yeah.
I like the music for when you come into Romulus. Really good, that is. It's almost like Romulans have finally got a decent tune like the Klingons did.
Yeah.
Bit late in the day, but never mind.
Yeah.
Capitol looks fantastic. Wonderful CGI map. Council Chamber is a great set. It starts quite promising, it has to be said.
It does.
The troops have a new style uniform, which is similar to the shoulder pad less design of Deep Space Nine, but it's got a bit more colour in it.
Yeah.
A bit more dolly mixture. But that's not a bad thing. One of the senators has purple hair.
I like.
Which is quite unusual for Romulans.
So, yeah, but it doesn't take long. Basically, they open their mouths, it goes wrong. Because you're talking about joining Shinzon's forces. In this case, you don't know who Shinzon is. Fair enough. And then they say, even if the Federation couldn't stand against us. They're not standing against you. You just fought as allies in the Dominion War. An awful lot of the barriers between you as peoples have been broken down. They're not fucking standing against you in the first place.
Yeah, apparently that's all been forgotten. Pretty much all of Deep Space Nine has been forgotten.
Yeah, but that's my problem with this, is it's fucked up from in the start.
Mm-hmm.
The guy who wrote it obviously didn't like Deep Space Nine and wanted to ignore it.
Yes,
I think he couldn't fuck off and boil his head.
Right, he was presumably a Next Generation fan and not a Deep Space Nine fan. So, and it shows.
Yeah, so most of my criticisms are where it's all wrong. There's a lot because of Deep Space Nine. So already it's getting off on the wrong foot. Mm-hmm. It doesn't understand where things are in terms of Romulans.
No.
So fuck up number one.
Yeah.
Ding!
You get an unnamed Romulan commander who you recognise.
Yes.
I want a big part in your life. The walk on will be fine. I just want a big part in your life. A big part in your life. I want a big part in your life.
He's played by J. Patrick McCormack, who was an admiral in Dr. Bashir, I presume. He was in Voyager, and he was also, probably where you recognise him from, in Babylon 5 as General Lefcourt. I don't know how you pronounce his name, but there you go. In Endgame. And he was also in the beginning TV movie as well.
So basically, he's one of those people that I recognise him because he's in a lot of stuff I watch.
Yes, basically.
Fair enough. So, purple hair woman says she has an appointment with the Atholian ambassador, leaves a bomb that makes them all go crusty and die.
It's great effects.
It's a very good effect.
It's the eekiest thing I think we've seen on Star Trek to this date.
Yeah. Then you switch to Picard dressed as a waiter, I'm sorry, in the new dress uniform.
Yeah.
And he's giving what's supposed to be an amusing speech that isn't.
Yeah, and for some reason, Patrick Stewart's gone back to his broad Yorkshire, which he never used to use for Picard's voice, but I guess it's been so long he's kind of forgotten. But yeah, you expect him to, drop phrases like happen and such things. Yes.
Wesley is there briefly.
He had the line that was cut.
Yeah. And then Picard says, "Shut up, Data," and then says he's been waiting 15 years to say that. You don't need to. You could have just said it already.
Yeah.
Troy's dress is really bad.
Oh, yeah, and why is everybody else in uniform but her?
Yeah.
What's the logic behind that? Is this like a return to the first 6 seasons of Next Generation where she had to have her boobs out?
It's twatty writer fuckface, you see?
Yeah.
So that's another thing that he's got wrong.
Yeah.
Ding, number 2 fuck up.
It's supposed to be in Alaska, by the way, hence the mountains behind them. Because, of course, that's where Riker's from. So that makes some sense if you know. It's a weird mixture, this film, because there's some things like, Wesley being there and Guinan being there. Only if
but
you
Wesley fucked off with the Traveller, didn't he?
Exactly.
He became some kind of interdimensional being.
This is just it. It's like there's some continuity there, but it's messed up and wrong because Wesley shouldn't be there. As we'll get on to, Worf shouldn't be there. It's just it's a mess.
It's all the people he wants there, you see, from when he liked it or whatever.
Yes.
Because he's a fuckface. And then you get to see, I'm not sure whether it's Mott or Vajazzle in the background.
You do? That's quite nice to see another Bolian. We haven't seen one of those in a long while.
Now, at this point, I understand why Worf is there. He would have come to that wedding.
He would have done, yes. Even though he was, he's got
ambassador to Kronos.
Job, yeah.
No, he would have been there.
He wouldn't be wearing Star Trek uniform, obviously.
Well, I don't know, because if he's the Starfleet ambassador...
Yeah, you don't wear military uniform if you're an ambassador.
He might... Well, I don't know.
Well, the ambassadors never have done, and they shouldn't do either, because they're not part of the military.
But, so anyway, again, he's there. I don't have an issue with him being there.
Yeah.
Other than... Was it the last one where it made no sense that he was even there? I think that's right, isn't it?
Oh, Insurrection, he turns up and you don't get to hear the reason because they couldn't think of one, basically.
Yeah. So this time round, they get...
He's there for a wedding.
It makes sense that he's there, but that's about the only bit about it that makes any fucking sense.
Oh, yes, and Romulan ale's illegal again, apparently.
Yeah. Again, because he's decided, because he hasn't watched Deep Space Nine, you see, the writer is a fuckface. Then Brent Spiner sings.
Oh, gosh, just when you thought you couldn't get any worse.
Oh, the Shat's better.
Much better, yes. Any day we would take the Shat over blooming Data.
Yeah. And it's his wedding present to them.
Yeah, nice. Couldn't buy him a toaster or anything. Oh, no. Oh, Michael Dorn's voice is being altered.
I was just coming to that. His voice has been... Yeah, they make him part of the crew, even though he isn't part of the crew anymore because he's a fucking ambassador. And they fuck his voice up.
Yeah. Because they got the technology to do it. It's like, yeah, but he never spoke like that ever before. Why is he suddenly... What's happened? Is his voice broken or something? Bizarre.
Well, some of the time it sounds like he's got cotton wool in his mouth.
Yeah.
Some of the time it's more like 20 seconds to comply.
Yeah, they drop the pitch. It's just silly.
It's just stupid.
They also mess with the Rieman's voices, but that's okay because we've never heard of Riemann before, so that's fine. But the shots of the effect shots, they're all CGI in this, as with Insurrection. But unlike Insurrection, they've got a decent effects film to do it. This is digital domain. Domain, yeah. And yeah, it looks nice. All the effects look good.
Yeah.
It looks like they spent some money on the effects. The sets are fine. Yeah, it's just the actual script that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the most important bit of the mix, isn't it? But never mind. The bridge, the Enterprise has changed a bit again. They've changed it every time in these films, but never mind.
Well, they're just rearranging the furniture.
Literally, that's pretty much what they're doing, but also changing the colours slightly as well.
Paint, redecorating, it's okay. So, and then they found some positronic signatures, but they're close to the neutral zone. Why would that be an issue? They're friends. So, that ding, fuck up number 3.
Well, they could have, this wouldn't have been a problem if they just inserted a line saying things have been frosty with the Romulans ever since such and such an event. Because this is some time after the Dominion War, and you could quite expect that things might have got frosty again at some point. I mean, let's face it, Starfleet was preparing for the fact that after the Dominion conflict, that things would get bad with the Romulans again. So all they need to do is just drop a reference in, and we'd be fine. But it's just like, as it is, it's like Deep Space Nine never happened.
Yeah, but also you saw them growing closer. And
some of them. And
the whole preparing for the Romulans, that was all Section 31, who were...
Yeah, but then we found out there were people, members of the Romulan government, that were also against
Yeah, but they've got their person in place, haven't they? So.
Well, they did, but I mean, as they make the point in this, the administration's change on a regular basis. That's not. It's not a problem, just providing they just reference the fact that things have gone to pot. But they're not about. They are and they aren't about referencing stuff. This is just it. It's just stupid because, anybody coming to this new isn't going to understand who the hell Wesley is and who the hell Guinan is. And anybody coming to it with good knowledge about Star Trek is going to be pissed off because they messed up so many things.
Yeah, well, no, it was deliberate by Fuckface because he didn't like Deep Space Nine.
That's your theory.
Well, it's the only thing that makes any sense. Otherwise, he just, has no brain cells. Either way, he's a fuckface. So, yeah, anyway, that's the third thing they've got wrong. Well, I suppose the fourth thing, actually, is 4 because Worf's voice is fucked, so that's 4. So then you have Picard saying, Mr. Worf, you're with me. That's another fuck-up. That's number 5, because he isn't Mr. Worf, he's Ambassador Worf. Mm-hmm. Or, if you're thinking of him as a friend, that's fine, but then that would be Worf. Either way, Mr. Worf, that's wrong. And you can't just deploy him like a crew member.
No, I know. And
And then you get them, they think it's really funny to refer to Riker as Mr. Troy. Ha 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 ha. Troy is from royalty. Bearer of the sacred chalice of Reeks, the whatever House of Beta Z. If it's part of their tradition to have a shared surname, that's what would happen.
Well, it doesn't even involve the fact that it's an alien culture because, I mean, I've got members of our family who've taken. I've got a cousin who took his wife's name just because Auckland's a bit of an embarrassing surname, to be honest. So quite understand it.
Yeah,
so
but
even now it's a thing. So it's not a joke. It's pathetic, isn't it?
It is pathetic. But I mean, what I mean is if they're sitting there trying to choose. What I meant before when I said, if it's a thing, because it might be that in their culture you keep separate names, because that happens, If a shared surname is part of both of their cultures, hers is the name with the lineage, so hers is the one they'd go for. It's not amusing, it's not a joke. Fuck off. So that's another point. So I reckon this guy is a sexist wanker as well as being a fuckface. Then they land the shuttle. Now, I quite like the shuttle.
Oh, really? That's weird. It's normally me saying, oh, look at that lovely shuttle, and you go, it looks like a van. This is just a box with a couple of little wings that fold out.
I like the shape. It's quite angular. It looks less box-like. I like the shuttle.
Right, okay. We have clearly very different tastes in
shuttles. I like the shuttle.
It's another John Eves design, by the way.
Oh, okay. Cool. But they take off in a fucking Jeep.
Yeah, why are they suddenly using wheeled vehicles?
Nobody did before.
No, they've got transporters. They don't need wheeled vehicles. And then, if the transporters don't work, you
land
take
the
a shuttle
closer. Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't land the shuttle nearby just to go driving around in a fucking Jeep that looks like current technology when this is the 24th century.
Yeah, well, the whole point is we've not seen wheeled vehicles up to now because they're not Trek.
No.
I mean, that's the thing one of the things that annoyed me about the 09 films as well. Suddenly everybody's driving cars again. It's like
motorbikes.
Why? They don't. It's not a thing anymore. We've moved on.
Yeah.
Stupid.
Very stupid.
It's just an excuse for Picard to become a petrol head.
Oh yeah, Picard's fucked in this. That's another thing.
It's continuing Patrick Stewart's never-ending midlife crisis, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah. So yeah, this is another thing that's wrong. I think this is point 6 by now.
6 or 7, I think.
Yeah. So then, of course, their mission is to ride around picking up bits of android.
Which would be a lot quicker if they used a shuttle, but
And then they get shot at by Tusken Raiders in jeeps.
Yeah, they're funny how they find the head last as well for dramatic effect.
Yeah.
And why are they so surprised it looks like Data?
Because it's a...
What was Law? I mean,
Oh, I know, but they don't remember Law, do they?
No, apparently not, no.
No, because Fuckface didn't like that, you see, so it wasn't in there. Oh.
I mean, there's nice stunt work in this, but it's more Mad Max than Star Trek.
Yes, it is. It's the wrong film.
And ultimately, if Shinzon wants them to have B4 so that he can pull off the plan, which is to download the data from the Enterprise or wherever it is that he does, why did the Remans give chase? They want them to have the android. They don't want them to get blown up. Boy, don't shoot at them. I mean...
It doesn't make any sense at all, because if that's the idea, using B4, then you don't have the Remans do anything. You just let him find it. You don't reveal yourself. You don't have your weird fucked up conversation with Picard. You just have B4 appear, and then you've got the information, and you succeed.
We get on to Shinzon, but I mean, ultimately he suffers terribly from twirling moustache syndrome, doesn't he? And So
yeah, that makes fuck all sense. And Data's head is being amusing, we're going to put him in the special Data's head compartment.
The glove compartment, except it's a head compartment.
And then you've got Data remote controlling the shuttle so they can do a stunt like a really bad Bond film.
Yep.
And then, like, they don't have any seat belts, and they land at such velocity.
They should have shot out the front.
Yeah, or at the very least a massive whiplash, not just sort of been okay. That's just bollocks. And then it turns out that this particular droid is called B4. Ha ha.
That makes no sense. Why would you call your first android before? I mean, that's just... It only makes sense in the fact that we know that he made more androids, but therefore he wouldn't have called the first one before, would he?
No.
It's just a terrible pun that makes no sense.
No, not at all. And it's like he's got Data and lore, so, you know... Those are the things that's the sort of the pattern. He's not going to call the first one B4. I mean, he might have called it something different because he hadn't come up with that particular name.
Prototype, maybe, but that's not a very imaginative name, obviously. But yeah, B4 makes no sense.
No, he might have called him Proto.
Proto, yeah, that would have worked, wouldn't it?
Would have been all right, but no, B4 just doesn't work at all. Stupid. And this whole thing of why didn't Law know about this brother?
I don't know. It doesn't fit in the continuity at all.
No,
does it,
because
the
fact that...
And just how many have soon made. I mean, originally it was like Data was unique, and then Law kind of works because he was supposed to be a prototype, wasn't he?
And he went wrong, and that's why he was evil.
Yeah. So that just about works. But then to introduce another one makes no sense at all. It's just shutting androids out left, right, and centre, wasn't he?
So anyway, that's another thing he gets wrong. We're on 7 or 8 by now. Then you have Admiral Janeway.
Well, we get to see Picard's ready room, so at least there's something to be said for this film. But yeah, we have Admiral Janeway because she's apparently failed up the ranks, as many people do, to be fair.
Yeah. And then you get a reference to the Dominion War, but they still don't make any reference to the fact that after that war, you get Ambassador Worf.
No.
He's just sitting there like some... person who's just fucking forgotten what he was doing in it.
Apparently something went horribly wrong and he ended up back in Starfleet. But again, there's no reference to it. It's just he's suddenly there like he never left.
And it doesn't work that it went horribly wrong. I liked that ending.
I know. It pees all over the end of Deep Space Nine. It's stupid.
Then Data gets his grammar wrong because he goes all customer service and says such and such same something or other as myself. And the correct grammar is the same as me, not same as myself. Data would not use incorrect grammar. And then he says, I feel nothing. What about the fucking emotion chip?
Yeah, that's been completely forgotten as well, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because that was a joke that wore out quite quickly, but again, you need some sort of reference to the fact that he's not using it anymore.
Yeah, again, so that's another fuck up. What are we on now, 10, 11? And then I do a memory download that doesn't appear to work, and they spot a redundant memory port, and they go, what's that for? And then don't ask.
No.
Don't investigate.
Nothing suspicious about that at all.
No. Then they go to Romulus and wait 17 hours. I think waiting 17 hours would have been a better movie than this. And then the fugly ship hails them. Now it's time to get anal about spaceships. Woohoo!
Took a trip on a Gemini spacecraft, and I thought about you.
Yeah, this is a scimitar, which I think it looks good from the front, but from the side looks an absolute mess. It's kind of, from the front, it's very Livingston the Lionfish, actually.
Yes, I actually wrote that in my notes. Was that a deliberate jip on the part of Shinzon to make his nasty ship look like Picard's pet?
I know, or mess with his mind,
Yeah. Livingston the Lion ship.
Yes. We get Ron Perlman as the Viceroy.
Oh, Jafar.
Yeah, who's completely wasted in this role. I mean, we know what a good actor Ron Perlman is. He's got nothing to do, has he, really?
No.
And why do the Remans look like orcs? Weird.
No.
Why have we never heard of them before?
Well, they're a slave race. That one small bit that does make sense. For a very long time, the Federation have known very little about Romulus. And if the Remans are a slave race then, and they're mostly found on this mining planet, why would you... You know, that's one of the few things I don't have a problem with. They all beam down, and Worf's on the way team. See, you ask for a Federation envoy, and you get a free ambassadors to Kronos while you're at it.
Yeah.
And then Troy is described as empathic and telepathic. No.
Yeah.
No, she isn't telepathic, so that's another one. What are we on now, 12, 13?
And later on, she's able to sort of sense the position of the Viceroy across distances of space, which admittedly was the sort of thing she was doing in Season 1 of The Next Generation, but they quite quickly realised that she couldn't have powers that were that strong, so they rolled them back. But oh no.
That again, I do think that makes sense in context, because he has formed a link with her using his powers, and it's left a vestige behind. And
well, it's one thing to be able to sort of sense things when you're in the same room as them, but quite a different thing across distances of space.
No, but he created the link. She's just using it.
And his powers are never really explained. I mean,
oh no,
are all Rieman's psychic, telepathic, whatever the hell he's supposed to be? I mean, he does a thing with Shinzon, doesn't he? Where he puts his hand on his chest. What's that all about? Never explained. He's just a completely pointless character because you never find out anything about him.
And then you get him going, "Can I touch your hair?" It's like, fuck off.
Creepy.
Yeah, again, another sexist, Mr. Troy, and Troy is the only one not in uniform.
So this is Tom Hardy anyway as Shinzon.
Yes.
It's a pity that...
Yes, I am Shinzon.
Well, no, he's got his ordinary voice in here, which is unfortunate because, of course, he can't pronounce R's. So, yeah, he's the Weeman leader of the Womulans.
Yeah.
It's a bit bad. Nice costume he's wearing, which will
shiny purple.
Be used by the Xindi and Enterprise. But, yeah, very early role for Tom Hardy here, this one. And, it's not badly acted, it's just...
Badly written.
Badly written, yeah, that's the bottom line.
So, I won't bore you with all the details. Basically, he's a clone.
Yeah.
He's had all the same stuff as, I think the same as you, and I'm the same as you, except for the teeth. The teeth are not the same. He hasn't had the dentistry. And then he says, I feel exactly as you do. It's like, no, you don't. You haven't had the same experiences. We are all shaped by our experiences, including really small things, like you might make a different decision based on whether or not you're hungry or your stomach is full. You might make a different decision based on whether or not you have a cold at the time. Do you know what I mean? There's so much that affects the way we experience the world, and thus affects our decision making and shapes our experiences, as you would find with identical twins. So if you know anything about identical twins, you know that they're identical in one very specific scientific way, but they are not the same people.
Yeah. And they kind of toy with that being kind of part of the message of the film, but they never really spend any time on it. So yeah, at one point Picard says, I can tell you about my past, but I can't tell you about yours because we're different people. It's like
he doesn't accept that because he's a twat.
Yeah,
and you kind of get the point that the writer also did not understand that concept either because he's a fuckface. So that's another thing he gets wrong. I think we're on 14 now, but it might be 15. Then you meet Commander Denatra.
Yes.
I like her. I feel
brilliant.
like I know her.
You do.
Ah.
She's played by Dinah Meyer, who was Dizzy in Starship Troopers.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she looks fantastic as a Romulan. Wow. Well impressed.
She does. She has a proper swagger.
She does, yes. She has that scene with Shinzon, and you do expect him to tell her to release Wodger any moment.
Oh, don't. And you get things like, you get some of this really shitty dialogue. It's like, I've got one word for you, allegiance. And then she says, I've got one word for you, trust. And you're just like, nobody says this.
That, I know. It's clunky as hell, isn't it, this dialogue?
Oh, it's terrible. And then he dismisses her. She goes through the really shit doors of crapness that are see-through.
Yes, so she can see exactly what's happening behind her.
Where he's really...
The idea of closing a door is some privacy. Not with these doors. No. Oh, no.
No, they're pointy. But they're also see-through. Yeah, well done. So she can see that there's something wrong with him. And then B4 has the cat. Lovely.
Oh, return of Spot.
Wouldn't Spot be dead by now?
Well, this might be Spot 2 for all we know, but...
Oh, Stripes, okay. And then he starts doing shit to the computer. Why have they not fucking learnt by now? If you've got a Soon-type android, protect your fucking computer. Duh.
Yeah.
Oh, but that's because Fuckface hasn't remembered anything to do with law.
Yeah.
So he hasn't remembered any of that, you see? Because he's a twat. So that's the other thing. Another thing he got wrong. I think we're on 16. Then you have a moment where you've got Shinzon and Picard talking, and like you said, Picard's like, well, I can talk about my past, but it's not the same as yours. And you've got Shinzon going, do you recognise the eyes? And you look at the two of them and go, no, they're not the same fucking colour. So...
Yeah, I mean, the basic concept of a clone Picard is an interesting one. And, that leading to a character that's going to be his nemesis, fair enough. But, yeah, I also like the fact that he references the fact that the administration changed and therefore plans were dropped, which, we see, in a modern age, so that's understandable. Remus looks really good. Again, nice effects. But the problem is, it is a problem that we haven't heard of it up till now, as far as I'm concerned, because it's like a fairly major thing. You'd have thought somebody would have dropped it at some point.
For me, it's not a problem that the Federation haven't heard of it, but for me, watching this, it's a problem that from my point of view as a viewer, there is no backstory.
Yeah, it's all out of nowhere, isn't it? And way too late in the day for stuff to be out of nowhere, isn't it?
Yeah, so to suddenly be supposedly invested in all of this... But again, that was one of the problems with Next Gen, wasn't it? Is that you were supposed to care for people that appeared out of nowhere for no reason.
This is true.
And Fuckface likes that aspect, doesn't he? And then you get some really even more shitty poetic dialogue between Shinzon and Picard. I say poetic, that's in inverted commas. And then you've got Picard going, all men, all races can be united. What about the women?
Mm-hmm.
He is the captain of the fucking show that changed it from no man to no one.
Yep.
So what's he doing? Using fucking sexist language. Oh, it was written by Fuckface, who's also a sexist twat. Anyway, they then discover the radiation thing of doom and wrong.
Failure on radiation.
That just sounds like a fabric. Or, a fabric conditioner. Clothes smell fresher with failure on. And of course it's biogenetic and shit. And then you see Troy in a skimpy nightdress, but Riker isn't skimpily clad at all.
No.
And it's like, time to come to bed, and fair enough. But then Troy's mind is invaded by Shinzon and the Viceroy, because he's using his telepathy to enable him to be a voyeur and take over her mind, and it's really sick and wrong and horrible, and serves no point in the plot, really.
No, beyond the fact that it gives them a reason later on for her to be able to locate the ship.
Yeah.
That's the only reason it exists.
But they could have done something else with it as a concept, if they needed a plot point to forge a link.
Yeah. Well,
that she didn't like, even, but he didn't have to be this. It's because he's a sexist wanker, and he thinks it's the 1970s when you have to have a rape scene because reasons.
Yeah, it is pretty icky, isn't it? There was another one that was cut, thankfully, but we don't need this one either.
No, it's just not necessary. It's horrible.
Yeah, I mean, on the upside, Riker calls her Imzadi, which is nice to hear that again. But yeah, Ugh.
It's just really horrible, and it's just wrong. It's gratuitous.
And ultimately, we find out that Shinzon's dying because he needs blood from Picard. So what's he? How's he making sure he gets hold of Picard? He's messing around with Troy's mind. How's that anything to do with anything? No,
it's not. It's because he wants to know a human woman or something. It's just because he's written by Fuckface, who's a sexist arse twat. And then Shinzon transports Picard over all of a sudden.
Yeah, and he's in that get-up from Best of Both Worlds that Locutus was in.
They're then being over B4 and download things from the external memory port.
There is one of the few good bits that always makes me chuckle, and I don't know whether it was supposed to or not.
Hello, Jean-Luc.
Why am I here? Why have you done this?
I was lonely.
Really camply. It's like Richard O'Brien style, and it makes me giggle every time. Yeah. It's one of the few really good lines in this, but as I say, I'm not sure they really meant it that way.
No. It's the only...
was lonely.
I was lonely. And he takes a blood sample, and then, supposedly, because of transporting B4, they've got the exact location of the entire Federation fleet, which they don't need. You find out later, because their plan was to...
Destroy Earth. Yeah, and they're not going to be detected by any of the fleet because they're
cloaked.
They've perfectly cloaked. So
why did the fuck they don't need that for?
I don't know.
So that's another point's wrong.
Shall I take over?
Yeah, I'm going to just carry on drinking.
Yeah. So then B4 turns up to collect Picard, supposedly for Shinzon, but it turns out that it's actually Data in disguise. And he Vulcan neck pinches the guard. Did he learn that from Spock or something? in unification. But anyway, their escape is noticed, and we get the Romulan red alert sound. So they get that right. It's just weird. They get some bits of continuity spot on that you wouldn't necessarily.
Why would a Riemann ship have a Romulan red alert sound?
I suppose you could argue that, but they're using pretty much the same technology, aren't they? Yeah. They make for the shuttle bay, which is a nice CGI extension filled with Scorpion attack flyers, one of which they nick, blast their way through the corridors, which are handily wide enough to be flown down. The hugest corridors we've ever seen, I wonder why. Oh, right, that's why.
They've got to fly a ship in it.
Yes. And as they escape, they're beamed aboard the Enterprise when in range. Worf now becoming a transporter chief, apparently, because... Yeah, it's all done from the bridge. It's either Worf or it's Geordi. It's like, hang on a minute, you had a dedicated transporter chief before that wasn't located on the bridge for presumably sensible reasons, but no, don't bother with that anymore.
And why don't they bring Miles back for the wedding?
Yeah, why not? Denatra gets cold feet about the whole situation, realising Shinzon's planning on destroying Earth, leaving the Romulans pariahs in the Alpha Quadrant, like they weren't before.
Well, but they weren't after.
They were still. I think you're overplaying that one, because they were still, to be honest. Dr. Crusher, in a rare moment of having something to do in this film...
I know, she does stuff.
I know. Has discovered that Shinzon is dying due to his accelerated growth, and Picard's blood is needed to save him. Data plays with himself, well, before, and we have a pointless interrogation scene that goes nowhere and does nothing. We just really, really don't care about Data anymore, let alone before. The Ouchie table of Ouchie is back as Picard briefs his crew, which I suppose is nice. And in preparation for battle, Geordi puts a force field around the warp core, which is a nice idea.
Yeah.
Which they really should have used before, because let's face it, it's not new technology. Although it turns out to be completely ineffective, so I guess that's why they didn't bother before. Picard goes to stellar cartography, which is much smaller and more boring than it was on the D in Generations. Funny that. It's a redress of the engineering set, with a recycled console from the sonar ship in Insurrection. Hooray, cheap. Picard quotes the Bible, which is always good fun, and Data realises they're going through a rift which blocks their communications. So whoever is at the helm should be shot, to be frank, because space being three-dimensional and all, there's no need to go through a nexus or whatever it is that's going to block you. You just go around it, for heaven's sake.
Yeah. Or above it, or below. Yeah, it's just...
The scimitar opens fire and can apparently fire when cloaked. I guess it was only a matter of time before somebody else figured that out. It's been long enough, let's face it. Sensibly, the Enterprise fires a 360-degree spread, hitting it thanks to the law of averages. Shinzon hails, and we get another return of hollow communications, because that always works out so well, doesn't it? I mean, I do like the bit when he sort of walks through the desk. That's kind of cool. Yeah. But he says to Picard, "Oh, well, you'll never find my hollow emitters." It's like, how did you smuggle them on board the Enterprise? Oh, don't think about it. He promises to let the Enterprise go if Picard turns himself over, and we get a very long talky scene where Picard tries to talk his clone out of his evil plan. It's no Khan versus Kirk, which I suspect is what they were going for. If so, you failed big time. Then it's Denatra to the rescue! Hey! As the Romulans turn up in their groovy new Valdor classes. This is one of the best bits of the film.
Yes.
These are nice bits of design, because, let's face it, we've only ever seen the Romulans using warbirds.
Which I do like, to be fair.
Other than the very small scout and science ships. But up till now, it's been warbirds or nothing, pretty much.
Yeah.
Now we've got these brand new designs that look fantastic.
They do, I like
And they're kind of like movie-eyes, the warbird, because they were just the same way as the D. It was quite a short, squat thing in many ways, and then they extended it for the E for the widescreen films. They've done exactly the same thing with the warbird, which makes sense. I like it. It's a good design.
I like it as well. I do also like the warbird, but I like this new ship too.
Yeah, no, it's good, and it's good that they have more than one designer ship, after all. It's a shame the bridge clearly uses recycled Cardassian consoles from Deep Space Nine. We've seen that design before somewhat, and it's just a redress of the E-bridge, although they cover that up quite nicely, so that's not so much of an issue. As the Enterprise is hit, you see the bridge shake, and it's on gimbals now, so the actors don't have to fake the being buffeted about thing anymore, so they actually are being buffeted about. In a nice effect shot, one of the Valdors gets part of its wing shot off, which then impacts on the Enterprise's nacelle. The other Valdor is shot up badly too and is immobilised. Troy uses her empathic powers to trace the Viceroy across the distance of space, and so target the Enterprise's weapons on the cloaked scimitar. I mean, it's nice that she gets something to do, don't get me wrong.
And that she gets to have her revenge, but she shouldn't need revenge, because that scene
shouldn't have happened in the first place. Yep. We get a good look at the Scimitar Bridge at this point, which is a high multi-level affair, so it's rather different to what we've seen before, which is fair enough. This is a much bigger ship than what we've seen before, so that makes sense. It has a huge bridge. As Worf leaves to tackle a Riemann boarding party, an officer played by one Bryan Singer takes his console. Oh, yes. Not sure he'll be returning for the Picard series somehow. Being, yes, persona non grata in a big way. Worf remarks to Riker that the Romulans fought with honour, which is a lovely character moment, actually, considering, Worf's previous opinions of Romulans.
Yeah, but again, they would have been changed by the Dominion War.
Not that much. Under heavy fire, the Viceroy does a hand solo and jumps down a garbage chute with Riker giving chase.
Yeah.
Turns out the E has the biggest Jeffrey tubes we've ever seen in the series.
They have to be, because Riker's put on a bit of weight.
Yeah, no crawling needed here. Plenty of space for hand-to-hand fighting, which seems to last a lifetime. Basically, this lasts for the rest of the film, pretty much. And ends with Riker kicking the Viceroy down an implausibly deep hole. Yeah. Unless it's supposed to be a turbolift shaft, possibly.
Possibly. Yeah.
Originally, he was scripted to quip, "Don't worry, hell is dark." Understandably, Frakes objected to that.
Yeah.
So it was cut from the script. I mean, that's more James Bond than real Riker.
Yeah, but they think they're in James Bond, don't
they?
Well,
funny enough, writer
that...
Logan went on to write Skyfall, so...
Yeah.
The Scimitar fires on the Enterprise's bridge, blowing out the bulkhead in front of the view screen.
Well, that's the problem with having that sort of bridge design. Where
it's
basically
easily destroyable.
Massive target, isn't it?
Yeah,
really?
it is rather, yeah. But, I mean, it's nice effects as a crew member gets sucked out, so to speak. It was a highlight of the film for him, anyway. It's a reminder that, yes, this is not the most sensible position for a bridge on a ship, but, BSG will correct that. Data says they're nearly out of photon torpedoes. Did they abandon quantum torpedoes? They never get a mention, do they? But he had them before, didn't he?
Yeah.
Funny that. The Scimitar parks herself in front of the Enterprise in order to taunt Picard, because that's what you do as you're twirling your moustache. The captain text messages Troy at her console. That's what it's called, a text message.
It actually does say text.
Yeah.
It's just really... It's like, it's on a par with the fucking joystick, isn't it?
It is up there, really.
It's just terrible.
The crew brace themselves, holding on to the handy handles that are on the consoles. That's a good bit of design there, well done. As the Councillor flies the ship straight into the Scimitar, you get some nice CG effects of the collision, something you could never have achieved with a model after all, so that's fair enough. The Scimitar then somehow reverses out of her predicament, which makes no sense at all because there's no friction in space. Picard starts the auto-destruct sequence, but it's broken. That's a great bit of design, isn't it?
Really...
You want to blow your ship up, and you suddenly find that the most important system to do that isn't working.
Yeah.
Shinzon orders the use of the Phaleron weapon, which is the Genesis device, if you prefer.
Oh, yeah. No, it's just a fabric condition. You don't have to worry about it.
It's a much bigger version of what we saw at the start in the Senate chamber. Picard beams over, because that's what he does these days. He's Mr. Hero. And the transporters blow so nobody can help him. Yeah. Ultimate plot convenience.
He's just trying to be fucking Kirk, isn't he?
Or John McClane, basically. Again, that's pretty much what he's been in the films, isn't it?
Yeah, but
I'm surprised he hasn't taken his jacket off and gone down to his vest again, really, but there we are.
All we need now is for Patrick Stewart to release an album of really bad singing.
Mm-hmm. Data leaves Troy in command, which is nice.
Yeah, but it still calls her Councillor, not Commander.
Yeah, interesting, yes. And runs from one ship to the other, which is a nice idea, I grant you, with the pressure blowing him across the gap. Yeah, no, that works, and it is a dramatic moment. It's a shame they spoiled it in the trailer, but there you go. Shinzon and Picard have at it on the bridge of the Scimitar. Yes, not like that. And then Picard makes for the Phaleron chamber, which is stupidly located right behind the bridge, because that's where you put your, dangerous explosive thingy, isn't it?
It's not compliant with COSH,
Originally, the Scimitar would have had multiple walk calls next to the bridge as well, which makes bugger all sense on such a big ship. In a Ming the Merciless moment, the captain manages to get his clone to impale himself on a metal pipe.
Quite like that.
Yeah. It's a tad clumsy, though. But I suppose he's in the process of dying, so you've got to expect him being clumsy.
But then he does the orc thing, doesn't he? Of pushing it through him.
Yes. Yeah. Data arrives in time to use that convenient personal transporter on Picard. Well, I don't even want to think about what that technology involves. And then he phases the Phaleron beam, exploding himself in the process. We should care, but we don't.
No.
That's the bottom line. There's a nice moment where they're hailed by the Valdor and Picard says on screen, despite not having one. A big hole. And it winds up with an absent friends scene, which is trying so hard to be a Spock dies moment.
Yeah.
But we're just cheering because he's gone. Yeah. We don't care.
Is the wine Chateau Picard, by the way?
It is, yes. You do see. Again, another nice little continuity bit that will mean nothing to non-Trek fans, but, weird. At least they didn't blow the ship up, which I thought was going to happen. I remember the first time I saw it, I thought, no, not again. But they didn't do that, and it's being repaired in dry dock over the Earth, so that's fair enough. And we see some worker bees as well.
Eric the worker bee.
Yeah. In a nice scene, Riker says his goodbyes. That's good, and we needed that. He's off to become the captain of the USS Titan, which, frustratingly, we don't get to see.
Yeah.
There's a series of spin-off novels about his adventures aboard what is stated to be a lunar-class ship. It's similar to the Sovereign, but a bit smaller. But it's a very low-key goodbye scene, but at least he gets one, unlike all the others, pretty much, who are just sort of toasting Data's death or something. I don't know. We get Picard talking to B4, which makes Data's death seem really cheap.
Yep.
Look, we have a backup. Even knows Irving Berlin. Oh, good. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to kill him, just kill him and leave it at that. So there we are. That's our film. LeVar Burton is on record as saying the film sucked.
Yep.
He ain't wrong.
Nope.
Marina Sirtis added that it sucked less than Insurrection. Again, she ain't wrong. And that was our son's comment as well.
Yeah. He also said the effects are better, which is also true.
Yes, no, the effects are great, the music's great, the sets are great, all the production values are great. It's the script that sucks big time.
Nice video, shame about the song. Nice video, shame about the song.
Oh, yeah nice. It's the lowest grossing of all Star Trek movies, including Star Trek 5.
Yeah. It doesn't... I would take Star Trek 5 over this.
Yeah. And I would take this over Insurrection, so...
Yeah. No, yeah.
Patrick Stewart believed there was another Next Generation film planned. I can't believe for a minute there was. But it was kicked into the long grass following Nemesis' dismal box office.
Yeah.
Nobody cared at this point, that's the problem. It's like, you left it too long.
Yeah.
There are a lot of deleted scenes, but to be frank, none of them add anything. And the second mental rape scene of Troy is really awful.
Yeah.
Just like, thank crud they dropped that. And also the one about seatbelts on the captain's chair as well. Oh, just don't go there. It was a film that was desperately trying to be Wrath of Khan. It's like, what works with Star Trek movies? I know, Wrath of Khan. We know that you just can't replicate it. I'm sorry. There's no pre-existing history with the bad guy. He's just turned up. There's no pre-existing history of the Remans that are backing him up.
Well, it's the same with Brandy Snap Cummerbund, isn't it?
Yes, from what little we know about that film that we're never, ever going to watch.
No.
Just feels like a cheap knockoff. It's not Insurrection bad. I think it makes more sense than Generations, because at least we haven't got anything weird like the bloody Nexus and the wanky Christmas scenes. So it does. It's like the second best Next Generation film, but it's still not very good.
No.
I mean, if you did a special cut like they did with Phantom Menace, where they cut all the Jar Jar scenes out, if you cut all the B4 stuff out, it would have been a lot better. And as you pointed out, the only reason B4 is there is for that sort of being beamed over business, but you don't need that.
No.
So it's completely redundant.
Yeah.
But funnily, one Brent Spiner was involved in writing the script for this.
Wanker.
Yeah. What I really hated about this film originally when I saw it in the cinema, and I came out spitting chips, was because it was being sold as like, finally we're going to get a film about the Romulans. And what do they do?
So the
5 minutes in, it's all about the Remans that we don't care about. It's like, no, I wanted a film about them. And when the Romulans are there, they're great.
Yeah.
You know, the Valdors and Denatra, and it's great to see the council scenes. And, you know, the Romulan bits are great. It's just they didn't have the courage of their convictions. Somebody had seen Lord of the Rings and thought we needed orcs. I don't know why they went down the Reman route, but it's a bloody criminal decision. But it doesn't bother me as much as it used to, because now I'm used to it, basically. So I'm not coming to it thinking it's going to be all about the Romulans anymore. Yeah.
But now that we've watched all of Deep Space Nine as a rewatch and sort of pulled it apart to an extent and dissected it, all the stuff that doesn't fit with that show fucks me off even more.
Oh. I mean, the biggest crime being like, what the hell's Worf doing here? Yeah. That's just ridiculous.
I think the last time I watched it, I didn't mind it. I'm angry again now.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. I'm exactly the same. The last time I watched it, which wasn't that long ago, I thought, "Oh yeah, this isn't as bad as I remembered." And I watched it again tonight. It's like, oh, it is. I vacillate between this film being, it's not as bad as I thought, and actually it's rubbish. And it depends how, last time I watched it. So I suspect next time I watch it, I'll think, oh yeah, it isn't that bad. But anyway. It's not going to be happening in a hurry, is it? Let's face it.
No, well, we've done the Star Trek podcast, haven't we? We've done it for the Star Trek podcast.
Yes.
We're not going to be doing another Star Trek podcast at any point, so I have no need to watch it again in my life.
Well, yes, we're not going to be covering it again, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yes. You can tell from our disappointment that, originally, the funny thing was that originally we were going to be finishing on this, which would have been a tragic, way of finishing the broadcast, wouldn't it? So wonderful that we have Discovery to look forward to. The trailer for which is up. I don't suppose you've had a chance to watch it yet, have you?
No, I haven't.
Went up today, and it looks interesting, looking good, very bright and colourful, it has to be said.
Cool.
But that's not a bad thing. Although apparently everybody knows about Section 31 now, which isn't really in accordance with what we discovered in Deep Space Nine either. But never mind. Does nobody watch Deep Space Nine? Really? Really, Star Trek writers? You need to watch Deep Space Nine. It's the best Star Trek. So yes, we can be more positive about the future because we've got Discovery, potentially this Picard series.
Depends where they go with it, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm not holding out too much hope.
The kids' TV show that's animated might be cool.
It might be. Who knows? We shall keep an open mind.
I like She-Ra. That was not aimed at me.
She-Ra was silly fun, but that's a bit off the track.
No, as in, if that's the audience they're aiming for,
maybe
I might like it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Potentially.
We're not finishing on this down note, thankfully. And we're not even finishing this year on this down note, because, of course, we've got our Christmas special to look forward to, but, hey, we won't say anything more about that. Juicely Dangers? Juicely Dangers, yeah, that's what we're doing. God, that sounds painful, doesn't it? I've got Juicely Dangers. Ow, that's why I'm walking like this. I got the Juicely Dangers. Right, let's find out what everybody else thought about this film. We may discover that everybody loved it, because sometimes it works out that way.
It does sometimes, yeah. And we've heard from Doreen. He writes, this will be a quick one. This was much of a muchness. I'm fairly sure I've seen it before, but I had no recollection of it.
It's the best way.
Didn't hold my attention. I didn't care about the evil Picard clone. I didn't even really care about Data's death scene. No. As for B4, what on earth? But seeing all the spaceships was pretty good.
Yes, the spaceship stuff is the best stuff.
Being back with the Next Gen crew was pretty nice, but they didn't quite seem themselves.
No, some of them shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah, yeah, very much agree with that.
There were some very boring scenes, weren't there? I think that's the worst bit, is like, there was, if you're being boring, you really have failed. Star Trek 5 is never boring. Stupid, nonsensical at times, cheap as chips, but never boring.
Annoying.
Anyway, The Mark has this to say. So how do you fuck up the swan song to Next Generation? Take a great writer. Yeah, he has written some good films. Yeah. Then find out he doesn't like the show and doesn't get it. Oh dear. Take an average director on the job. Take a cast that on paper should be wonderful. Take Ron Perlman and Tom Hardy and have them just phone it in. Yeah. I think that's a bit harsh, because they're both trying, but they're not really given any material.
To work with, yeah.
Particularly not Ron Perlman. He's just there to glower, isn't he?
Yeah.
What a waste. Have a management burnout on Trek. Have a plot with mind rape played as rape. And ramming starships be not devastating. Yes, there should be more explosions than we saw.
There should, really, yes.
Have a copy of Data so you can kill the original and paste Data. Control V. In the end, Paramount felt the franchise was suffering from franchise fatigue. The only fatigue was with Paramount. Well, yes, I think that setup was tired, wasn't it? Let's face it. And what a way to kill the franchise. But wait, what? 20 years later, there is a new show! It's not dead. You can wound this thing called Trek with things like Nemesis, but by God, you can't destroy the show and the hope that it brings. To the future!
Yep.
Yeah, well, yes, thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
I think it's quite right, yes.
Yeah.
I think, had we not got Discovery, had this been the last Trek ever...
Don't. Well, it was for a long time.
It was for a while, yeah. It did feel like, Trek was dead, and perhaps that was the right thing for it to be.
We've heard from Ol.
Let's see what he makes of this.
Hello, Peter and Anne-Marie. It's all here. Finally catching up with the Borgcast. I've just sat and watched Star Trek Nemesis. And do you know what? It's not actually as bad as I remembered it being. It's certainly better than Insurrection, which was pants. And apart from a few missteps and some other bits and bobs that I'd like to talk about, actually I rather enjoyed it. Now, I maybe wasn't giving it my full attention, but I enjoyed what of it I did see. Now, one criticism I had all the way through, but particularly in the fights in the corridors, was the direction. Not particularly the editing, but just the general direction of the actors just seemed a bit slow and flabby, and I don't know, I mean, I appreciate everyone's getting older, but nevertheless, Worf throws himself to the floor like a big flopping mattress, and then Riker slides down a vent very much like a dad at a soft play, gingerly following his kids. As I say, I appreciate that maybe Jonathan Frakes is getting on a bit, but he's not ancient in this. Yeah, it just needed to be tighter and faster and feel more urgent, as it was. Those fight scenes, particularly between Riker and the Viceroy, just felt like a drag. Nobody felt like they were really trying to hurt each other. They just felt like they were going through the motions. But I think a lot of the criticism that Nemesis gets is the story, which actually I thought was all right. Yeah, we don't get proper Romulans. We get the Remans instead, and inventing them for no reason was maybe not the best plan that the world has ever had. But the story we get about Shinzon and the Remans, for what it is, works really nicely. And examining Picard's character and where he might have gone with a different life, and would he and Shinzon have been the same person, or are they unique, and are they, even if they'd had the same experiences, would they end up being different people? Which I thought was very Star Trek-y and quite interesting, and a good character examination of Picard, which, okay, these movies tend to be character examinations of the captains, but when they're good, they work well, and I thought this one did. Shinzon, they got extremely lucky to get Tom Hardy. They cast someone who looked like he could possibly be a young Patrick Stewart, and yeah, then they get lucky by casting Tom Hardy. There must have been so many actors who could have done it but weren't quite right, and maybe they spotted something in Tom Hardy, or maybe they just thought, well, this guy's camp as Christmas, he'll do. I don't know, but he pulled off the bondage gear as best as he could, and he did a reasonable, I wouldn't say impression of Patrick Stewart, but a reasonable character who could have been a different version of Picard, the dark mirror that they kept banging on about. The real misstep in this is the rape scene between the Viceroy, Shinzon, and Deanna. It's just, I don't know, it feels wrong for Star Trek. It feels inappropriate for this film. And I don't know, it made me feel all kinds of squick, which I guess was what they were aiming for. But I'm not sure that I was there for the right reasons. What else was there? Good spaceship battles. The CGI has not dated well, but CGI from whenever this was made probably doesn't date well, no matter what film it was. And I don't imagine they had massive budget for this. That, they weren't making this on a Star Wars budget, despite doing actually quite a Star Warsy kind of film. Which, well, I know it's not necessarily Star Trek-y, but I like Star Trek to do Star Warsy in its films. It's why the 2009 film kind of works. It's why First Contact works. Arguably, it's why Insurrection fails so spectacularly. I didn't mind that Worf was there, because they're midway through the wedding. Worf would be at the wedding, quite legitimately. Maybe if we'd had a line of dialogue which said, "Oh, Mr. Worf, do you mind stepping into tactical," or whatever it is he does, that would have solved that. But I was quite happy that he was there, and he didn't feel out of place. B4 is a bit of an interesting idea, and yeah, he is a get data out of jail free card, clearly, but they exploit it reasonably well. I don't know if we needed another Soon type android, but we've got one now, so tough. And yeah, we get some Romulans, but mostly we get Remans. I liked what we saw of the Senate. I really wish we'd seen more of Romulus generally through Star Trek. And I hold out hope that maybe one day we will. But until that day, this is probably the best view we'll ever get of Romulan politics as it is. And I quite enjoyed it for what it was. Even if then it sort of took a right turn into Remans and a load of new things that we'd never heard of before. Anyway, like I say, overall, I quite enjoyed it. It needed to be pacier, I think. And I think that it wasn't something that you could fix in the edit. I think you needed a better director of actors and action than we had in the former Stuart Baird. I'd assumed it was Jonathan Frakes doing this, but actually I think he might have done a better job than Stuart Baird did, but never mind. Thank you very much for the broadcast. I have listened to, I think, everything you've put out, and I have thoroughly enjoyed it, so thank you for many hundreds of hours of free entertainment. It's been an absolute pleasure to be listening to you all these years, and I will be carrying on with the next one, which I can't remember the title of, but I know you're doing Battlestar Galactica, so woohoo!
Borgcast Galactica!
Yay!
Write it in your diaries, or actually preferably put it into iTunes, because then you'll actually find it.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, I think he's quite right about the dramatic scene, the fight scenes seeming a bit flabby.
Yeah.
Which is no comment on their added weight, but just the fact that it's not... For an editor, he hasn't edited the scenes together very well, has he?
No, but also it's not... You could shoot it in a way that seemed more dramatic, and it's not shot that way either.
No.
It does.
The music is taking a lot of the weight for those scenes, isn't it?
It is. It just feels like jousting with pillows, really.
And yeah, the premise of the story is good, but the details just haven't been thought through, have they? This is the problem with it.
And, the B4 stuff is all completely extraneous.
Yeah, no, he liked that, and I'm sorry, I just can't... Yeah, I just don't care. I don't care. And, Brent Spiner does not look like an unaging android, does he? He looks...
older
and flabby.
It worked for the duration of the 7 years TV run.
But even by season 7, he was beginning to look... like not much like he did in season 1, and you can't blame Brent Spiner for that. No. You're going to age, but if you've got supposedly an ageless android, you've got to kill him off at some point, basically. Because
what I meant was that I think he could get away with it for season 7. I'm not sure he'd get away with it beyond it. What I was saying.
No, he didn't.
But also, there was so much wrong with season 1 of Next Gen. That you can kind of lock that year off and look at season 2, and the difference isn't as bad. But I think one of the differences in terms of us and Ol is Ol doesn't watch Deep Space Nine, so he doesn't have a problem with Worf being there because he doesn't know that Worf is supposed to be the ambassador to Kronos.
Mm-hmm. I do agree that Tom Hardy did make a good young Patrick Stewart. That kind of works.
Yeah.
But and the space battles work well. I didn't have a problem with the CGI in this at all compared to Insurrection on my life.
No.
Oh dear. So it was quite. I thought the Enterprise looked quite shiny in this. I was well impressed with that, and the Valdor's excellent as well. But anyway, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Great to hear from you.
Who else we heard from?
We have also heard from Andy.
Hello, Orgs. Just quick bit of feedback. Once again, saying goodbye to a beloved Star Trek franchise. 2 weeks on the bounce now. It's a bit depressing, actually. I feel you need to do something, more positive and going forward. So I'm looking forward to Discovery Season 2 when that kicks off in January. My thoughts on Nemesis. It's a long-running thread going all the way back to the Space Dock jury days. I don't actually think Nemesis is as bad a film as it kind of has the reputation for. Don't get me wrong. It's a very, very bad Star Trek film. But I don't think it's a bad film. It's maybe one rewrite away on the script from being a lot better. There's a few silly things which don't make sense and contradict themselves. The biggest issue with this film, and, I suppose this is a good point as any to look at the next-gen films as a whole, is none of the next-gen films really treat the characters as the characters from the TV series. What we have are characters with the same names being played by the same actors, but fundamentally 7 years of character development is pretty much washed away from the end of All Good Things. We get glimpses of it in some of them, but on the whole, none of these characters are the same people that we knew and loved throughout 7 years serving on board the Enterprise D. I mean, speaking more directly about Nemesis, some of the good, I think the FX have stood up very, very well. Some of the best CG space battles we'd seen up until that point. Obviously, the JJ films have kind of surpassed that, maybe a few less lens flares. I mean, speaking of the JJ films, there's a lot of this film feels like the rebooted Star Trek film. All that was missing from that sequence with the Dune buggy was a bit of Beastie Boys, and we'd been all set. I feel that if you took this film in its entirety as it is, and simply replaced the Enterprise with another starship, and AN other crew, I don't think we'd have as much problem with it as we do. A lot of, certainly my problems, and I imagine a lot of your problems, you being the listeners of the broadcast here, have with this is it just contradicts and ignores, and it just doesn't feel true to the characters we've come to know and love. One of the things which kind of irritates me is, the introduction of B4. I don't know why they just didn't use lore. There's nothing saying that, at some point in the intervening decade or so since we last saw him, that the Romulans got hold of him through the Tau Shiar, and, Shinzon fell upon him for nefarious means. I think the Remans, on the whole, are largely unnecessary and aren't the best villains Star Trek's ever come up with. I like the idea that Romulans, the first species these Vulcans which had rejected the teachings of Surak did was to enslave as this slave race, but it's not really explored or anything in the film. They're just monstrous to look at, and they kind of play up to all the tropes, and this is Star Trek, you should be playing against those sort of tropes. The Remans should have been proven to be the good guys, but no, they're not. Shinzon, he's a strange, the whole Picard clone thing. I mean, if he's so desperate to have Picard to live, to, I don't know, drink his blood or whatever the fuck he wants to do, there was at least 3 instances where Picard is there in his grasp and he doesn't do it until it's too late. But those are the sort of things that I feel another treatment over the script probably would have helped fix those sort of issues, and those little things which just don't make sense within of themselves. I think on the larger deal with it not feeling like a proper Star Trek film probably comes down more to the director, who was primarily an editor rather than a director, and unashamedly not a Star Trek fan. Now, that in of itself isn't a bad thing. Nicholas Meyer, when he came to Star Trek, wasn't familiar with it at all. But what Nicholas Meyer did is he then sat down and watched all of the original series before he did Star Trek 2, so he knew who these characters were. Stuart Baird refused to. He's actually said, I felt that if I came in with any reverence for this whatsoever, I'd do a worse job. My job was to come in, make an entertaining, thrilling film, and get out without being too attached to it. And in that respect, I do feel he succeeded. I think if you showed this to someone who has never seen or heard of Star Trek before, I think their biggest question would be, why are all these old people in the middle of this action film? I think that what they should have done is, if not with Stuart Baird, but a director, this would have been a good one, I think, for Jonathan Frakes to do. Insurrection notwithstanding, and we've covered Insurrection, that's more down to studio interference. I feel if you'd given Jonathan Frakes this film, with this script working with John Logan, he's a huge Trek fan as well, I think that could have given us a really good film, one which could well have equalled First Contact and been a very good send-off for the next generation. But instead, we've got this thing, which throws a lot at the audience in one sense, to say, hey, look, it's Admiral Janeway, who has somehow gotten off scot-free from her crimes against the Delta Quadrant, and hey, look, it's Guinan, and hey, look, it's Wesley, but then doesn't really explain or do anything, creates far more questions than it answers, and it just feels lazy and patronising in a sense. It feels like you're just saying, oh, you're a fan, you'll like this reference to a thing. And of course there's issues with things like Worf suddenly showing up, and it's like, well, I understand that they probably didn't want to get into a whole thing for people who hadn't watched Deep Space Nine. You expect to see Worf there, but if you're taking that track that you're expecting people watching this not to have seen Deep Space Nine, then why are you showing us Admiral Janeway and Crusher and things like that? If you took the Enterprise out of this, put another starship in that position with another crew, put the crew of the Excalibur, Captain Shelby from the books, put the USS Hood, because the Hood is awesome and the Hood kicks ass in everything it does. Put any other ship, with the exception of Voyager because that was terrible, but you put another ship in there with another crew, I think you'd have had a really good, solid sci-fi romp in the Star Trek universe without being weighed down so much by the expectations of 7+ years of Next Generation backstory. And I think it would have been a lot of fun. It's a film that fascinates me, saddens me, but at the same time I don't think it deserves all the stick it's got. It's arguably the second best Next Gen film. It's not necessarily a positive for this film, more a damning indictment of the majority of the Next Gen films, but I do feel it's 1,000,001 times better than Insurrection. Anyway, those are my thoughts on Star Trek Nemesis, and I suppose with that it's goodbye to the cast and crew of the USS Enterprise of the Next Generation. Oh, all I will say is the Enterprise Z has never looked better than it does in this film. I'm to the point it gets destroyed. Anyway, I will leave you to it. Pleasure as always listening to the broadcast. I look forward to Season 2 kicking off and revisiting some of our Season 1 episodes at some point in the not too distant future. Until then, TTFN, and I should go.
Yeah, you heard it here. He's looking forward to Season 1 of Next Generation. Oh dear.
Strange man. But I can't say I'm not grateful, because it means I don't have to watch it.
He's taking the bullet for you.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, the Remans are never really explained, are they? They're just orcs. That's my problem with it. It's like, what the hell?
They are orcs, basically. Yeah. Something like the Beastie Boys playing with the Jeep.
Oh, so thankful we didn't get the Beastie Boys. I can't stand the Beastie Boys. Urgh.
It just, I think to me, that him making that comment shows just how out of place that Jeep thing is.
Yeah.
Actually, in Star Trek. What do you think of his idea that if it had been a different ship with a different crew but still Star Trek, it might have worked?
Well, it would have solved some of the problems, and you wouldn't have had, the Wharf one being the main one.
Yeah.
I just don't think it would have struggled even more box office wise, because you've got a whole new crew that nobody's invested in. Why are people going to see this film? At least, this had the pull of Patrick Stewart. To be honest, the rest of the cast weren't that well known beyond Star Trek fans anyway, so it didn't matter. But yeah, I think you had to have at least some of the original crew, if not all of them. I mean, you could have had not had Worf. No reason to have Worf in this story. Just pointless. You could use of any Doctor, because Crusher's got not given anything character-wise to do. Likewise, Riker, to be honest, is given very little to do other than fight unrealistically. So you didn't need a lot of the regular cast, and it's that whole thing about the reason why the original series worked as movies is because really the original series, yes, they had a large cast, relatively large cast, but it focused on just 3 of them.
Yeah, and that was the norm.
Yeah, and from Star Trek 2 onwards, that's what they do. I mean, all right, the others get a little bit to do, but they're very much strenuous to what actually is the big 3. Whereas Next Generation didn't have the big 3. You've got, obviously, Patrick Stewart's a big pull, Picard, but the rest of the characters, I suppose you could argue Data, but we were bored of him by now. Yeah. But the rest of them, really, you just can't do anything with them in movies. You can't spend ages, doing an adventure for Dr. Crusher, because it just doesn't fit in a movie, does it? No. It only fits in a TV series where you can devote a couple of episodes a season to her. That's the only way it's going to work. So, Next Generation ultimately didn't work as a movie. I mean, First Contact, even that has its...
It does have flaws, but it's the only one that works.
It's the only one that's really entertaining, isn't it? Let's face it.
And I think that the reason that First Contact works is because you've got the other 2, haven't you? Lily?
Yes.
And
Zephyr Cochrane.
And I think also that there are characters that don't have much to do, and which is going to happen, I think. But Marina Sirtis gets a decent amount to do. Mm-hmm. You get Barclay, which is nice. Do you know what I mean? So they don't manage to give everybody something to do in First Contact.
I mean, even Crusher, that's arguably her best scene in the movies is when she activates the emergency medical hologram. That's quite nice.
Yeah.
But she has the least to do of all the cast. But she fares better in that than she does in any of the others. So.
Yeah. But in some ways it doesn't serve the crew well, but I think it's the best one because it gives them something new and interesting to do. It gives them 2 other decent characters to interact with, which is missing in most of the other films. Because even though you've got a decent actor playing Shinzon, he isn't written as a decent character.
No, I mean, he comes out of nowhere. Yeah. I mean, Zephyr Cochrane was already well established in the series. Yeah, you're drawing from Star Trek lore there, so... And
Lily is a great character because
she's wonderful.
Yeah, so I think there's a number of reasons why First Contact works, but I really do think that that's the exception rather than the norm.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. What did the Llama God make of this?
Llama God's log supplemental. I'll see you on the dark side of Re-Moon. Alright then, Star Trek Nemesis. And I'm pretty sure this is where my opinion is going to diverge once again from everybody else's. But here we go. It's the second best of the Next Generation films. I mean, that's not really saying very much. It's not a particularly high bar to reach, but... here we are, nevertheless. What's the best film, you may ask? You probably don't. You don't want to know. Yeah, it's Generations. I like this film, and I like Generations because they're trying something different. First Contact plays it way too safe, and Insurrection plays it so safe that it becomes bland and insipid. So, at the very least, with this film, they're trying to do something that's actually properly cinematic, and it's actually worth the time of going to the cinema. So, that's why I rate this one quite highly, and not just because it's got Tom Hardy in it as well, but also that. And one of the failings that a lot of the Star Trek films, post-Star Trek 6 have done, I had anyway, is that they've tried way too hard to ape Star Trek 2, because obviously that's the film that's held up as a high bar, the gold standard in Trek filmmaking. And a lot of the time this is done without in any way understanding what the main story was actually about and why it worked. This film has another stab at it, not quite as successfully, but not as unsuccessfully either. It deals with topics of aging, change, things moving on, and has a pretty cool spaceship battle. The only thing it's missing really is bringing back a villain we'd established in one episode, but yeah, can't have everything. I mean, I'm not going to go through the story beat by beat here, so to get the band out of the way, B4, yeah, is a fucking waste of time, isn't he? He gets on your tits more than Data with an Emotion Chip ever did. It's Brent Spiner doing his absolute worst drama school acting. It's a terrible idea, which really ruins the emotional climax of the film. I know that Brent Spiner wanted to be written out because as an android, Data couldn't possibly age, although, of course, this is Star Trek. Geordi could have come up with an adaptive biomimetic polymer bioenzyme skin for Data that would mimic growth in humans. They can do this kind of shit. If you can hide Ducat's spoon, then you can pretty much do anything. Having to kill Data was a poor excuse. It brings some high drama, sure, but the massive problem with the whole B4 thing, aside from being a rubbish idea, and, you know, positronic waves can be detected across several sectors of space, it's like, why is Data not just a massive security risk? I mean, he already is a massive security risk, as we've seen in, you know, seasons 1 to 7 of the Next Generation, but that's not the point. The point is in having B4, the moment that Data downloads all his memories, it's like, yeah, okay, you're making a backup of Data, something's going to happen, and Data's going to come back. And ultimately, whilst it's a sad, tear-jerking moment when Data sacrifices his life for the crew, could argue that the Data as a character has evolved to the point where that he's gotten as close to being human as possible. The only final thing he can do to be more human is to die. So it's a sad ending, but as I say, completely undercut by the fact that, you know, his character's got a bit of a backup in his body double. So had there been a Star Trek 11, they wouldn't have even had to do a search for Data. He's right back in there under their noses. So that's a bit of a waste of time, really. The only thing B4 is really particularly good for is the bait and switch on the scimitar, and that's really cool because finally the Next Gen cast seem to have gotten the idea of security and have actually paid attention to the fact they've been hacked, and, you know, B4 was there to lure them in and to provide a weakness on their ship, so they actually figured it out for fucking once. Well done. I can only assume that Mr. Worf has used all of his expertise from his time on Deep Space Nine and learning from Odo to actually finally get a clue. Speaking of Mr. Worf, I'm not going to go into this, I've spoken about Worf before. To be fair, although he is the butt of some jokes in this film, he's really only there for completeness, and for a lot of reasons he really might as well have not been there. His character does very little, so on the one hand, no point in him being there. On the other hand, his character's not damaged, so that's something. Although right at the end of the film, Worf pages Picard to say, we've installed the engines in the Enterprise, so, what's he still doing there? Should he be back on Kronos? Oh well. So to the good, the whole film's at least trying to be different. The opening credits are different, it's not a Starfieldy thing. We actually get to see Romulus, which for once looks a bit more lively than a matte painting, so that's something. We get to see Jim from Neighbours dying like Jim from Neighbours should. Yes, that's perfect. And we even get the marriage of the Troys, which is, again, it's moving on, it's changed. Riker's finally getting his own fucking ship. I mean, I kind of say that it should have been too long, but as we've ascertained, Riker is a completely inept captain, so I guess after the Dominion War they were short on captains, so that's why they finally gave him one. But hey-ho. So there is a lot of change going on here. Things are moving on. I could say that the Argo scene is rubbish, but I won't. It doesn't really detract. So there's some really good music in this film. Jerry Goldsmith, for his last Star Trek film, unfortunately, he actually starts playing around, trying different things, a bit of electronic stuff in here. He hasn't really seemed to experiment very much since the motion picture. So yeah, no, there's some really nice music bits here. And like that with the dodgy lenses they use on that alien planet where it just lends it a sort of otherworldly air, which it should be. It is another world. But I'm not going to complain about it. The main selling point, of course, though, is Tom Hardy. You can argue that maybe had this film been made nowadays, we wouldn't have had to have another actor. We would have had digitally de-aged Patrick Stewart playing against himself. But even then, it wouldn't have necessarily addressed some of the main issues, because there's the scene where Picard shows Crusher a picture of himself as a cadet and says, remember him? No. Why the fuck would she remember him? Because he had hair back then, as been established in many, many flashback episodes. But still, it means we get to see Tom Hardy with nice shining bonds. And whilst there are certainly echoes of performances to come, not just in the haircut, but in some of the lines. I hope you'll forgive the darkness, Captain. We're not come to the light. I was born in the dark, moulded by it. You merely adopted it. Of course. Whilst he may not be the perfect double of Picard, he nevertheless puts in a great performance, and he's the best bad guy that the Next Generation for the Star Trek films have had since Malcolm McDowell chewed up the scenery equally well back in Generations. And for a young actor, and I think this was his first gig, he really, really holds his own against Patrick Stewart. People may beg to differ, but when I first saw this film, I was like, yeah, he's young. Big things lie in store for him, and The Dark Knight Rises. But he's going to do well, and I'm really glad that Christopher Nolan rediscovered him, so, you know, this is something. And there's a great storyline being woven between the two of Picard trying to come to terms with his own age. It could have been done a bit better. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's at least interesting. It has a bit of a try at the whole Star Trek 2 thing. But where the film really does shine, and it ticks a lot of geek boxes for me, and this is even post Deep Space Nine, is the starship battles. I'm intrigued to see what you think of the new starships. I mean, the Scimitar is a bit of a mess. I mean, it's a big threatening bad guy ship. It's a bit ridiculous with all the wings and stuff, but never mind. I really like the look of the new Romulan warbirds. They're sleek, they're fast. I really like them, and I wish we'd seen a bit more of them. I think the biggest disappointment is that when we see the bridges of those ships, it's clearly just the Enterprise bridge redressed. And speaking of the Enterprise, finally, I mean, you know my feelings on the E and the look of the E, but finally the ship gets a chance to shine, and clearly this film has been made by someone who studied the technical manual just as much as we have. I'm talking to Peter there, not Anne-Marie, obviously. Because she basically does pretty much every trick in the book. She does things that we never saw in the TV series. I know it's a different Enterprise, but still, they underutilise the Galaxy class as well. Here we've got phasers firing from all banks, rolling when shields are being damaged on one side of the ship, so it's really cool. I even like the ramming scene, because basically at that point Picard's out of options, so he does the only logical thing. Some slight issues with the scimitar being able to tear away, because surely in space there's no friction, so the Enterprise wouldn't have wanted to stay at rest. It would have just moved with the Riemann ship, unless it had some of its own inertia. I don't know. But honestly, the Enterprise really gave her all in this film, and it's a shame that we don't get to see her again in any subsequent films, because this is the film in which she kind of earns the name Enterprise, really. She takes a sound beating, but at the end of the day, saves the day. The only problem is that some of the interiors of the ships could be worked on. Like it goes down to intercept the Riemanns on deck 29. Didn't this ship only have 26 decks? And the stellar cartography set is woeful compared to the set from Generations, although that set was also vomit-inducing, so maybe it's for the best they didn't go with that one. But on the plus side, I'm sure that all will be happy by this. Despite the damage the ship takes during the battle, the ready room appears to have been saved, so that's something that should make Borg happy at least. So it tries, has a good space battle, has a good bad guy, and how we even make use of Councillor Troy. There's actually a reason for her to be on the bridge. Yeah, the whole psychic stuff is questionable, but she's actually now using her powers for a tactical reason. She also gets a cute little band of light across her eyes, which harkens back to the original series, so yeah, that's kind of cool. She's not just sat there saying, I sense anger, because yeah, no shit. She actually plays a pivotal role in the battle, so potentially, I mean, with the exception of Crusher and Worf, actually that's some pretty big exceptions, but pretty much, everyone gets something to do. The biggest shame really is that this then killed Star Trek. I mean, it wasn't promoted very well, and to be honest, is this the kind of thing that cinema goers wanted to see in the early 2000s? Probably not. And so this was it. This was, for a very long time, the end of Star Trek, the end of the Next Generation. After this point, Star Trek started eating its own tail, only ever looking backwards, apart from that brief interlude from the future in 2009 Star Trek. After this, it was all prequels all the time, and that's one of the reasons I'm really excited about the Picard series, because we're finally going to see past the end of this bloody series. We're actually going to see into the future of the future again. It's going to progress again, and that's kind of what Star Trek's about, progressing. So yeah, that's kind of exciting. So then, I'll be interested to hear what everyone else has thought. I'm pretty sure you're not going to be quite as generous towards the film as I was, but hey, I enjoy it. And until we all meet again in whatever form this podcast takes, it's probably Discovery in January. So hey, Discovery to look forward to. Until then, a glorious Christmas to you all, and to you all a good night. Of course.
Yes, we're not as big a fans as you are, sir. No. But hey ho. Yeah, the nice point about Data being a security risk,
yes.
And then finally realising that.
Yeah, I also like your point. If they can hide Descartes' spoon, Geordi can invent a skin that it ages or mimics aging.
Yeah, again, all that needed was a line, and
yeah, it could have worked. It really could. And yes, they are short on characters post-Dominion War. That's precisely why Riker got a command headcanon.
Yeah, but I don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem with the fact you don't get to see his bloody ship. Oh. Show us the spaceships.
Did Picard have hair in flashbacks? Because I didn't remember whether he did or not.
Yes, when he's played by a different actor, isn't he?
Is it? Honestly, I don't remember.
Yeah, because when it's that scene of him and Beverly when they go to see her husband's body and he's wearing that awful wig. But yeah, he has hair back in those days. Also, that one of the things we haven't mentioned yet that irked me was the fact that picture of Tom Hardy as Patrick Stewart when he was young, he's wearing the wrong uniform. He's wearing just a non-officer's uniform, crewman's uniform. He should be wearing an officer's uniform without the shirt, because we know that from what's the episode where he fights the Nausicaans? Tapestry. Yeah, so he's got completely the wrong uniform as well.
Oh, uniform gate all over.
Yeah, no, this is just... It's got too many holes in it. That's the problem. And the more often I see it, the more I realise that. Yeah. And yes, aping Star Trek 2, and in my opinion, not successfully. So there you go. But thank you anyway, sir. Thank you. We're glad you enjoy it anyway.
Yes.
Drew and Tracy, did they have fun with this?
It's a Sunday afternoon, and you've just made me sit through Star Trek Nemesis.
Yeah, a film that we've not watched in a long, long time, I reckon. I reckon this is probably about the fourth time I've ever seen it, including at the pitches, whatever.
But yeah, okay, let's kick off. What did you like?
What did I like?
Oh, there was a bit of a pause there. We always have this debate, isn't it? Whether this or is it Insurrection is like the worst film. This actually had me gripped tonight.
I still think that this is the worst one.
Really?
Yeah, I think. Well, actually, if we're talking about Next Generation, I mean, you could say Generations, but I mean, out of the two of Insurrection, the trouble with this film is it's all dark and grim and that, and Insurrection isn't. Insurrection's on the planet and it's light and all that lot. I just prefer Insurrection, and now having watched this, I still think it's better.
Yeah, but this is like Space Battle. It's the fucking Romulans.
Yeah, I know, but it's too dark. It's darkness. I don't like my Star Trek to be dark. I like it to be positive.
So let me just say...
Yeah, let's come to my points. Go on then.
I kind of like didn't quite remember the beginning of this, and then it was almost like, it's Tom Hardy.
Yes, oh yeah.
Tom Hardy, that is all. And then...
But he's very young, isn't he?
But that's what I was going to say. And then he said, lights go up 4 degrees. And then it was like Tom Hardy at 20, and it's like, nah.
I know, he doesn't look great,
he's
does he?
about 20. No, this is when he was like really young and really into his like druggies, so not the best film, but I do think he was really good in this.
Yeah, he's not bad, actually.
Action-wise, he's quite a good actor. So, Data in space.
Yes, I know.
You looked at me when I said this,
because you started telling us,
because
no,
I was like,
let's have this
hold on.
conversation later.
So, Data zooms across to the ship
through
right?
space, yeah.
So I know that he's like a humanoid and he's an android and stuff like that.
Yes.
But he's still got hair.
Yeah.
He's supposed to have like... I don't understand why the nothing of him kind of... You know, obviously if a human goes into space, then they just explode. Their eyes like pop out. You know, there's no oxygen, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't understand why he would not have any kind of effect.
What I would say on that,
surely though, his uniform would there would be something like that would affect his uniform. It's fibres, isn't it? So that would kind of like degrade.
Space isn't that bad. I believe the current thinking is that space isn't that bad for you. Even a human could survive a little while, obviously until you're suffocated.
Yeah, for about
instant
a
space.
Millisecond.
No, that's incorrect. Instant exposure to space doesn't immediately destroy you, and like he doesn't need to breathe, and he's got like synthetic skin. He'd be alright in space for a little while.
A little while, as in,
like I don't know, an hour or something, and then he might start to dissolve away. That's your trouble in space.
But that's my point. He zoomed over. Right, and I know we're watching a film, so like the timeline is not quite right. So it must have taken at least 20 minutes for him to get.
No. Yes, it's only like 30 seconds.
And then he's on the ship where it's it's breached, so there's no kind of like atmosphere or oxygen or anything in there. Something would have started to happen. It's a bit
film
poetic
physics, isn't it? Film
there.
physics,
yeah, whatever. Anywho.
Yeah.
I quite like this.
Yeah, I don't get me wrong.
We might be having
I do think
the
that
conversation
Insurrection's better than this. But it's alright. It's alright, actually. It's a nice full stop in it. I liked like the end. Like, obviously, Data dying, sad and that lot. And Riker going over to the Titan. It's a nice full stop on the series. It was very sad, actually, yeah. But, yeah, it's a full stop on it. It's really not as bad as I remember, actually. No,
definitely not.
It's okay.
Insurrection. Is that the one where they're on the planet and they all seem to be wearing kind of like pastel colours? Is that right?
It's the one where they're all like a million years old or whatever, isn't it? And the sonar and all that. Like, it's not great. I'm not saying Insurrection's great. I'm just saying it's a tiny bit better than this.
I think we might have to
1%
agree to
disagree.
Yeah,
well, like so many others. Andy Plastices and Peter Organ, but yeah.
I really enjoyed this.
It's good. Yeah, it was good. Not bad. Not bad.
Are we doing like Insurrection?
No, we did it, didn't we?
Did we?
Yeah.
See, it's that fucking bad. I wiped it from my memory.
I know you did. Like Data, yeah. Anyway,
leave it there.
Yep.
All right. Enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Yep, great
See you
stuff.
later. Bye.
Bye.
We're not doing Insurrection again.
We love you very much, but there is no way we're doing Insurrection again. In fact, I'd be quite happy if I never see that movie again in the rest of my life.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. The business about Data and space. He's completely synthetic, so it doesn't... I mean, maybe a bit of ice on his uniform, because presumably he'd have, got a bit of atmosphere when he was ejected into space. He brought that with him, which would then have frozen. So a bit of frost on the uniform would be all you would notice, I can't help feeling. I am not a scientist, so... Tom Hardy at 20.
Nah.
But he is good in this. He is one of the better points of this film, and they were very lucky to get him, really. But obviously, it was before he was big. But yeah, he's good in it. He's just, there's no way that you can just introduce a character and expect them to have the weight that Khan did, considering that it was in the original series.
Yeah.
Hey ho. So we're currently on Twitter looking at the latest escapades of the Pie Man, because this time of year he's always in town having a good time.
Yeah, he is. Now hang on a minute, because
and some of his tweets are just epic. You really do need to follow him on these nights.
You do follow him on Twitter. I'm just trying to see if I can find the latest, because it's really quite fantastic. Bear with me a moment. Right, new much ho at E. Alison, yes, I need a place. Toss stay. Let me know, but bouncers sent me home. You stuck, let me know. Currently, terrifyingly loads of young peepercoth, my beard.
He's having a good time.
Oh, that is an amazing tweet. I love
it.
Yes.
Awesome.
Did he have an awesome time watching Nemesis, though?
Hello, orgs. Parry here to talk about Star Trek Nemesis. It may surprise some people to know that this is not my favourite Star Trek film. I do not consider this the best of them. In fact, this one kind of rumbles around in the bottom bundle of Star Trek films. Not necessarily, I don't actually hold with the every odd-numbered one is bad, but odd-numbered ones do have a worse record. So this one kind of sits down with Insurrection, Generations, Star Trek the Motion Picture, to an extent Star Trek V, although I have a soft spot for that film that it really, really doesn't deserve. This one actually was the one that, when I last did a big rewatch of the movies, I really avoided, because it used to make me quite angry, because there are some cores of good ideas in here, and there's some really good stuff, and I feel the film, unlike, say, Star Trek V, which is just a happy mess, Star Trek Motion Picture, which is a pile of dull, or whatever Star Trek Insurrection is, this one seemed like it had some potential, but it kind of squanders it. And I maybe don't think that as much. I don't think there's a good film trying to get out. I think this is a film which does some things well, but a lot of things badly. So I'm going to start with the things well, because I feel it's nice to be nice. So, for starters, one of the things that I really noticed about this, which every next-gen film struggled with, is that they do try to work with the ensemble cast. Naturally, for some reason, Crusher gets the worst of it. Crusher has a few lines of dialogue, but she does have a couple of, scenes, if nothing else, so there's that, and they've tried to involve Troy and Riker a bit more. Geordi gets a couple of bits. Data, and obviously with Data and Picard being the main ones, because I don't know if they had a similar agent thing that Shatner and Nimoy had, whereby they could kind of negotiate more screen time, although I did notice Brent Spiner also got a writing credit, so that's good. One of the things that I don't think anyone can take away from this film is it looks lovely. Romulus is really nicely realised, although per Romulans, always the bridesmaids, never the bride. I mean, hey look, Nemesis is going to feature Romulans. We're kind of kidding. Well, they're in it, but it's not a Romulan plot. No, it's actually these Remans who you've never heard of and have never been mentioned previously. And indeed, what are the Remans? Are they Romulans who've, over hundreds of years, kind of gone a bit weird living in the dark? Or were they the original occupants of Romulus who were all punted onto the rubbish moon? We don't know. Never explained. So there's that. But there is also, the battle scenes are really well done. Bear in mind, we've just come off Deep Space Nine. They do equally impressive stuff here. In fact, there's some really cool stuff. I like the way the ships do wail on each other in this. One of the things that some of the Deep Space Nine battles had was ships tended to explode rather easily. A couple of hits and they were gone. And here we have ships kind of firing lots of shots at each other. You've got a lot of new spaceships, with the Argo, the Scimitar, the Valdor, and its sister ship. And so there are some really neat scenes in that sort of extended battle in the Bassin Rift. That said, there's also a lot of action button pressing. That actually got me about a very odd directorial choice there, that for some reason whenever anyone does a significant bit of firing, we see a close-up on their hand hovering over the fire button. I don't know why we needed to see that, but there you go. There's some other bits. I mean, I liked the bit where the ship goes to red alert and you kind of get that little montage. That was quite neat. But overall, the film it doesn't work. I think, for starters, I don't think the script's that good. Now, it's not terrible. It's not horrible dialogue. It's just rather bland. Now, bear in mind, we've seen Patrick Stewart elevate material left, right and centre throughout TNG, and I think he's doing his best here, but I don't think he really gets a chance to shine in this. Similarly, it never has those big moments. We don't have something like, to give an example of another bad film, Insurrection's one, where he does his bit on how many before a relocation is too much. Those sort of moments where he can elevate what's otherwise a fairly poor film. Similarly, the film does kind of meander. For a film that's got a solid amount of action in it, it kind of mills about a lot. We do get the tonal shifts between the wedding, which is nice to see, and Prater, Jim from Neighbours, getting zapped. But yeah, he'll always be Jim from Neighbours to me. I don't care how long and how many roles he's done. But it's just not particularly good. It's got some really good stuff in it, some lovely effects, some brilliant set pieces, but it's got a whole lot of pointless stuff. The whole Argo scene, what's that for? In fact, the whole B4 plot is disposable, utterly, and indeed it kind of takes a bit of the punch out of Data's sacrifice at the end. And I looked through some of the deleted scenes, and there's a scene with Worf and Geordi clearing out his quarters, and I'd have actually liked to have had that included and frankly strip out all the B4 stuff because it's superfluous. Is it just Brent Spiner wanting more acting work to do? Is it so that they had a spare Data if they did get a film? I don't know. Similarly, I like the feeling of the crew breaking up, and in fact I think we could have had more with that in the film. The whole sort of mirror images thing, it's a nice idea. I don't think it was really well explored, if I'm honest. They did try to touch on nature and nurture, but they just never got into it. It was kind of, we'll have a bit of chat, but we're going to go back to the space fighting, don't worry. It was like they were scared to be Star Trek, which I think is a bit of a shame for a film. And one of the things this film did give me the impression of, although I wouldn't have admitted it when it came out, but definitely looking at it now, Trek was getting tired. You know, if you look at this, I think Enterprise was running at the time, but everything else was finished and Enterprise wasn't doing well. And we're just getting an impression that there was maybe the main creative team that had been on TNG from the start were beginning to run out of ideas quite a bit. In fact, that was most of Voyager. So, yeah, it's got some nice references, it's got some nice bits, but overall, I can't bring myself to hate it. I don't find anything in this particular... Well, no, actually I find the mind rape quite hateful, but for the most part I don't find anything hateful. I appreciate them trying to involve the crew as an ensemble, but overall I can't bring myself to like it. I can't bring myself to hate it either. It's just a bit neutral. There's some sequences I'd watch again, but they're 20 seconds of ships flying around. Just other than that, I really find this film hard to get on with. And so it seems a shame to do last in-continuity Borgcast feedback is a bit negative, but I blame Rick Berman entirely for everything. So all it remains to say is, for starters, I am looking forward to you doing Battlestar Galactica. I will try to get hold of the DVDs for that. I'm really looking forward to your new project. That's going to be interesting and fun. Also involves chimp abuse. Not me personally, I'm going to be leaving chimps alone. I'm not allowed near them. Looking forward to that. I'll hopefully get fed back on that, and do keep up the good work. I would like to say, as the Borgcast is kind of, well, maybe not winding up, but slowing down, this was actually one of the first podcasts I ever started listening to, so it is always a bit special. So once again, thank you guys for doing this. Thanks for all the time, effort, and entertainment you've given us for pretty much free. Cheers, guys. So I will leave you with hopefully a good festive period to both of you. Merry Christmas and whatnot, and I shall hopefully see you in the new year on a Battlestar called Galactica. Until then, bye for now.
Bye, sir.
Bye.
Yes, we'll remain free.
Yes.
This is the way you're going to pay for us, let's face it.
No. No. The idea that the Remans might have been the indigenous people on Romulus and got kicked off.
That would have been interesting.
That would have been an interesting thing to explore.
That. Yeah. They just turn up, they're the baddies. Yeah. Oh my. It's like, oh really? Because you could have used the Romulans, at least have some history?
No, we can't possibly do that.
No. Trek tired, definitely.
Yes.
I mean, Enterprise is very tired as a series, as far as I'm concerned. Possible exception of Series 3, but the rest of it is like just going through the motions, basically. So, yeah.
Yeah. The creative team are running out of ideas. See Voyager. Yeah, pretty much. And yes, absolutely, blame Rick Berman for everything.
Yeah, I thought you might appreciate that. Yeah. But you're right. Geordie's shortchanged in this.
He is.
He doesn't get anything much to do beyond.
He doesn't even do a Geordie role.
No Geordie role to be seen. No. But the battle scenes are good in this.
They
I'll
are.
grant them that. This is the best battle scenes we've seen in a Next Generation film. So yeah. But the action button scenes, he's right.
Yeah.
And they're just like there's buttons marked with just random numbers.
Yeah.
It's not even like fire.
101.2.
It's not even fire. It's like fire the phaser, so they press button number 6122.
Yeah, whatever. No.
Why is that marked like that? What sense does that make?
Is it based on American cop things where they say we've got a 482 and then they say 10-4 and all that shit?
Oh right, yeah, there's a 6121 going down. Yeah, that sort of thing. Maybe.
As if people don't know what it is when people have broken the fucking code for ages. So why can't you just call it what it is?
Anyways, thank you, sir.
Sorry, bit distracted there. Distracted. Oh,
detracted.
Fuck. Oh,
yes,
I'm
yes,
tired
you were distracted.
Yeah.
I don't want to go home. Oh, wait a minute, we're home.
Yeah. Maybe I need more beer.
I think you do.
That's what it
the
is.
Answer.
Yeah, more beer for the win.
Thank
answer. You, Porry.
Speaking of more beer, our Christmas special, alcohol fueled as per usual.
Oh, it was a bit.
Yes, do look forward to that. That will drop in your. I think it's going up Christmas Eve is the plan.
Yeah,
that should drop in your iTunes and your whatnots, whatever you're using. On the 19th of January, we shall be starting to cover a Star Trek. I've gone all West Country for some reason. I don't know why. Or is it the 18th? I think we will be generally recording on the Saturday. But we can't.
First one.
The first episode we can't because you're at the snooker.
Yes.
So we'll be recording on the Friday for that one.
Yeah.
But anyway, Discovery. And Friday the 11th of January is when we kick off with Battlestar Galactica.
Borgcast Galactica, yeah.
Borgcast Galactica.
I has a plug.
Oh dear, okay. I thought you were sitting funny. Is it that shuttle pod that you got stuck up here? Anyway, carry on.
Stop spoiling.
Yes, sorry, that's spoilers for later on, isn't it?
Yeah. Going up around Christmas Eve will be the Christmas episode of The Great Derelict looking at science fiction Christmas.
Ooh.
With me and
Martins
guesting on Andy Plastides' podcast, The Great Derelict.
There you go. So, okay, sci-fi Christmases.
Yes.
Incidentally, a happy Christmas to all of you at home.
Yes.
That's a little feature, no doubt.
Yes, of course.
But yes, we do echo those very words of William Hartnell. And I hope you have a fantastic Christmas.
Yeah.
We'll catch you for our Christmas special and in the new year, hopefully.
Yeah.
Have a great one. Take care. Thank you to everybody who's fed back.
Thank you. Happy Christmas. Bye-bye.
Take care. Cheery bye.
Come, they told me. Ba-rum-pa-pa-pum. A newborn king to see. Ba-rum-pa-pa-pum. Our finest gifts we bring. Ba-rum-pa-pum-pum. To lay before the king. Ba-rum-pa-pa-pum.
Music at the beginning of this podcast was written and performed by Adam Buxton and is used with his kind permission. All music referenced is for illustrative purposes only and no copyright infringement is intended.
Find our website at borgcast.libsyn.com.
And we have a YouTube channel as well.
You can find the Borgcast playouts on Spotify for your listening pleasure.
Visit our Tumblr site at borgcast.tumblr.com where you'll find images accompanying the episodes discussed in this cast.
Send emails or MP3s to borgcast@gmail.com.
Or you can contact us via Twitter on rev_org or borgcastammo. Hashtag Borgcast.
Shall I play for you? Rum-bum-bum-bum. On my drum, Mary nodded. Bum-bum-bum-bum. The ox and lamb kept time. Ba-rum-bum-bum-bum. I played my drum for him. Ba-rum-bum-bum. Rum-bum-bum-bum. I played my best for him.
Shut it down!
I have had enough of you!